So book number one is probably the most commonly recommended book for me to anyone, really. It's The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. Now, Steve Peters was a part of or instrumental to people like Chris Hoy, Victoria Pendleton's success in Great British Cycling. Funny enough, one of the previous guests on the podcast, Pete Mitchell, he had actually warned me, because we were long-time school friends, he had warned me about this guy that they had employed in British cycling and what an impact he was having for athletes on their mindset. And they were becoming more confident, they were becoming happier in what they were doing, and this guy was having a profound effect. It wasn't until, I think, after Beijing that the book actually came out, and it was a book that was available for people because Team GB had kind of hidden him away. And really what the book is about is taking very complex psychology that you can go and delve into many different psychology books, and it takes these complex ideologies and the complex theory and really allows it to be delivered in analogies and ways that are so easy to digest. So taking all this complex knowledge and creating really easy digestible content for you as the reader. I've never seen it put out this way, and the reason it is such an impactful book is because of how easy it is to read. So to give you a little bit of an overview, what Professor Steve Peters does is he breaks the mind up into the areas that are, again, like I said, you could go into many textbooks to find all the real scientific literature on it. But he takes three areas which he describes as the chimp, the human, and the computer. And ultimately, the process that he draws out throughout the whole book is that your chimp is the person, the part of your brain that receives all of your information first. So the chimp is literally like a chimp. It can be very emotional. It is the emotional part of the brain, and it can run riot if it's not trained. The human is the logical part of your brain, and that's really how you want to be and how you want to react and how you want to act as a person. And then the computer is the automated part of your brain, automated part of your system. So habits and things that you can do on autopilot through experiences that have been stored and that you can lean back on. So the example that, whether it's in the book or I explain to people when I am talking about this, is just when you're almost having a fight with someone, when you are having a heated discussion and you might say something brash and really emotional in the moment. And then more often than not, it may be 10 minutes, it may be 10 hours, it may be 10 days, but there will be a moment where you cool off and you come back and go, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't done that. And that is where the chimp has let go of the emotional baggage that's been going on, the emotional reaction that's gone on, and handed it over to the human. And they're having to pick up the pieces and act and react in the way that you actually wanted to. So through the book, through some of the training, through the ways that you can start to learn to talk to yourself and others, and through the way that Steve Peters explains it, you can learn to train your chimp to learn how to deal with emotional situations and pass it over to your human in a quicker, more efficient way, so that you don't react in a negative way that's going to have either negative consequences for yourself or those around you, and put you in a place worse off and having to constantly pick up the pieces through your emotional behavior. So it is a great way for athletes to deal with their emotions, whether that's in the moment, under pressure, or just every day, and managing the people around them. And it just stops that irrational and impulsive behavior that is so often we see in many, many people. So that's why I really recommend this book, is that it gives you a great, simple, tangible way to deal with your emotions, to deal with your brain, to understand what is going on in moments of the stress and stressful and irritative moments in your careers or your daily lives. And I recommend it for people in sport, recommend it for people in business. So if you are looking to be a less emotionally charged person and deal with things in the way that you want to deal with them, and go about your life in ways that are positively going to impact you and less emotionally, then this is a book. But I just really recommend it because it takes this simple psychology, the complex psychology, and gives it in a simple way. There's also some other areas around value-based systems and how you talk to each other. He talks about goblins and gremlins. I think that's an incredible part of the book about understanding the values, and that part I really recommend for parents to understand the words that you're saying around children, and then you can also start to understand the words that you're saying to yourselves and to other people and how that can impact them. So with all these books, I'm going to leave links in the show notes. So the first one I really do recommend, Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. So number 2 is Legacy by James Kerr. This was written after James Kerr had gone into the camp with the New Zealand All Blacks, who are one of the most successful sporting teams in history, if not the most successful sporting team in history. And the book, he comes out with 15 powerful and practical lessons that you can use in leadership and also in business. So these are skills that you can transfer into your own life. And definitely if you are in a team environment, I've been in teams where people have tried to bring in a lot of these values that were brought out in the book Legacy and try to instill them into their own team. The brilliant thing that you learn throughout this book is how much not only work that it took from the team of the All Black team, but also the people of New Zealand and the sponsors that came with it. There are so many different concepts and values that were brought out. I think one I'll just mention is sweep the sheds. It's a very, you may or may not have heard of it, but sweep the sheds was a term that was brought up from the New Zealand All Blacks, and it means that there were no players in that team that were too big to do the smallest jobs. And what would happen is after a game, after a test match, after the guys were leaving the changing room, they would grab a broom and the leaders of the group would sweep the sheds. They would physically sweep the change room. They would clean it up. And it was all about respecting the place they were from, but also that the guys at the top would do the smallest tasks, the menial tasks, and that no man was bigger than the team. And that was just an example of one of the things that they do and they have in that squad. But James goes into the book and gives you some ways that you can transfer it into your own life. And even by just listening to the stories, it will start to get things ticking and start to get you thinking about how you could perhaps add these into your own journey, your own career, you as a person, you as an athlete, those around you, maybe your team. And they have been successful, and you realize the reason why they have been successful for so long because of the buy-in that they had as a group. The most incredible part as well was how they got the sponsors involved and how they were able to translate the values of the team and turn the All Black shirt into an icon of a nation, so that anyone, the guy at the bar, the people walking in the street, they knew exactly what it meant to be an All Black. And even to the point where they could almost, if they were putting on the shirt themselves tomorrow, they knew exactly what was expected of them and what it meant. And it connected them to their ancestry, it connected them to their communities, it connected them to each other. And that is really what teams are about. And the All Blacks have absolutely nailed it. And then not only that, they've translated it to success on the field. It's a book that is really inspiring for those in sport, business, leadership, anyone that is trying to create a culture that is successful. I always say that the hardest part is actually putting it into practice. You can read it all you want, but most people will read a book like that and then not do anything. But if you can read a book like this and read the things that James Kerr is writing about, then you implement them and you really stick to them and your leaders buy into them, you will get success. This is something that is super powerful, and it's proven year on year on year. It's not something that's happened just out of the blue and it's been a flash in the pan thing that's given them success. They've been successful for a long time and held their standards for a long, long time. So my number 2 book is Legacy by James Kerr. I'm hoping to get James on the podcast in the future, which will be brilliant if we can. But for sure, Legacy by James Kerr is a must read in my eyes. So the third book is Open by Andre Agassi. Now, the reason I did this one is because it comes from an athlete's point of view. But I was recommended to read this book for ages, and I couldn't get it. I just had other books going on, but I wish I'd gone in earlier for this book, and I wish I'd had this book earlier on in my life, because like the title suggests, it is one of the most open and honest accounts of a career. Agassi had a very famous career as a tennis player. If you don't know him, really do some research on him, look him up. And his career and the things that he went through, being a rebel, being this very flamboyant, I mean, the hair was one thing, but this book, really what was going on underneath the surface, you would never have had an idea about. And the book was a huge success when it did come out years ago. But the real thing that hit me was just for young athletes, for any athlete to have an understanding of what really does go on underneath the surface. What you think you see out on TV, what you think you see out in the media is completely different from what's going on in reality. Now, this book is not a blueprint for every athlete, and Andre Agassi had some incredible ups and downs in his career, and that is what is so amazing in this book, is how he just tells you everything. There are so many athletes that I've read books that you can tell they're hiding something, they're not bearing everything, whereas this is literally bearing it all. It's telling you all of the good, all the bad, all the ugly, and just a truly incredible read and account of a man who made it to the top and was one of the most successful players in Wimbledon, Wimbledon, but also tennis. So definitely worth a read from an athlete's point of view, this one. I really do recommend it. It's one that I get recommended a lot. I got recommended a lot, and then now I've read it. I'm so glad I did and wish I'd done it earlier. So yeah, number 3 is Andre Agassi's Open. I'm actually going to throw in a 4th bonus book, and this one is The Pressure Principle by Dave Aldred. This is a book that had changed the way I dealt with pressure and changed the way I dealt with high performance. So Dave Aldred is renowned for working with Johnny Wilkinson. He travels the world now working with world number 1 golfers, Francesco Molinari, Adam Scott, I think Luke Donald as well was one that he worked with. Also now works with a lot of kickers in rugby, AFL, and he'd mainly, and we spoke about this in one of our first ever episodes on the show with Rob Andrews. So head back to that episode if you want to listen to more about Dave Aldred's work with Rob Andrew. And he spoke about how they had started out their careers and they got going with what Dave wanted to work on. And then eventually Johnny Wilkinson got handed and got involved with Dave Aldred, and then they worked together for years, and he was instrumental in getting Johnny Wilkinson to where he got to, for being one of the most feared kickers in the world, and one of the most successful kickers in world rugby. And basically what the book allows you to do and teaches you is how to harness stress and how to manage pressure. So one of the most common things you see in sport is that when people get put under pressure, they fall back to sort of their level of training. I think it's the Bruce Lee quote where we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. This is one of my favorite quotes because it's so true. And what Dave gives you in this book are, I think it's 8 steps. It is 8 steps that you can use, and 8 tips that you can use to, whether it's your language, whether it's your training, of how to manage stress and how to train in stressful environments, and have a detailed approach to how you're going to achieve your process under stress. So in the podcast I did with Rob Andrew, the example he gave was when he was kicking a goal, he knew by the time he was dropping the ball, he knew exactly the lace that he was hitting the ball and what part of the ball he was hitting that lace with. And that, for him, gave him utter confidence that give or take a bit of wind, the ball was going to go in the goal. And he practiced that over and over. The example I'd give and what I experienced was, as a bowler, we were trying to hit a target. And we went back all the way back to these basics of how the ball felt coming out the hand and understanding the different feel of the ball coming out the hand. And we did things almost blindfolded. We were filming it to check whether the feel out the hand equated into a successful outcome for us, whether that we actually hit the target. And perhaps sometimes even when it felt good, it didn't hit the target and we were trying to match that up. And then eventually all of the work culminated into sort of a test scenario, all put under pressure with people watching. We had sounds on of like crowds. We had consequences if we didn't get it right. But our goal was to hit a target 24 out of 24 balls. We had to hit it at least 50% of the time. Now, it's quite a small target, but we knew that if we could hit 50% and above, that was the standard we were setting, and we would raise that standard. But the thing that was incredible was when we missed, we measured how far we missed, because if you hit 12 out of 24, the other 12 that don't hit, how far have you missed? How big are those misses? And why have they missed? Understanding not only why you missed, I think another analogy used in the book is if you play golf, we've all stood at the top of a tee and we've hit an amazing drive, and then we get to the next one and then suddenly it goes veering off to the right and we have no idea why that happened. So this is what the training allowed us to do, was to understand why we were missing and how to correct it and how to move back to a place where if we did get it wrong, then we went back to a process, something that we had worked out individually that was going to get us the highest chance of success to hit our target. So we would add up all these distances that we've missed, and what the idea was that we would try to lower the number of that distance. We would try and remove, not remove, because you wanted to lower the amount of that number, the amount of misses you were getting. And it worked. Like, it really did work. Our consistency went up and I just soaked it up. I think it was so practical. It took a lot of work. It's very, very detailed, but that's the point, that if your level of training is detailed and specific and put under pressure, then when it happens to you in real life, you have something that when you fall back and you feel nervous or you feel anxious, then you have a process, you have this checkbox of things to do that you can concentrate on. And once you've recognized that you're under stress, you just go to those checkbox and you go to your process cues that you have. And I remember him even running us through Johnny Wilkinson's kicking cues. You could see them ticking off in his mind before he would kick a goal in a test match in a World Cup. It was incredible. So this book, if you are looking to improve how you perform under pressure, is 100% for you. And I just recommend it for anyone. Just if you're interested on high performance and dealing with pressure and managing yourself under pressure, this one is a gold standard. He is highly sought after, Dave Aldred, and I soaked up the time that I was fortunate enough to work with him. And the book is a great little, I guess, Bible of how to look out and improve your handling of pressure and stress and improve all your energy and where that's going and harnessing it all. So yeah, this extra one, a little bit of an extra one for you, is Dave Aldred's The Pressure Principle. So those are the books that I recommend for you. Like I said, if you have any books that you recommend for others and you're constantly telling people about, let us know. Reach out, find me on Instagram at Lewis Hatchett. Send me a message in my DMs and let me know. You can also find me on the podcast. You can reach out via the website, lewishatchett.com/podcast. Just contact the show on that webpage. And yeah, would love to hear the books. I'll perhaps do this again later down the line when we've got more books I've read and perhaps feel there's some that I might have missed, or there's some that I've really thought are worthwhile sharing with you. So yeah, let me know if there's any that you have. And thank you again for listening, and I'll see you again next week.